Does it still make sense to speak of peripheral countries here in Europe, and above all of pigs?
I would say that it's still important to recognize the peripheral economies from the stronger economies. And I don't draw the distinction in terms of the amount of debt that they hold or the yield on their government debt, etc. I draw the distinction between countries that need to implement structural reforms and those that really don't. And I would include France in that former category. You know, France has to implement structural reforms just as much as Italy, just as much as Spain and Greece. So I think it's difficult to. I wouldn't spend too much time talking about the periphery in general, because actually now within the periphery you have stronger economies than others. Economies that have implemented reforms like Spain are now enjoying much stronger growth, whereas countries that have been much slower like Italy are really struggling.
And what more could the European Central Bank do to support the economy and the markets?
Well, I think if the European Central Bank really wanted to make a big difference, they would intervene in the currency market and try to weaken the euro directly. That is a fairly simple thing to do. It would require some expansion of the balance sheet, but in particular a direct intervention within the currency market. Now, the ECB has refrained from doing this, and I think that there is very little appetite to intervene directly in the currency market. Instead, it chooses to purchase assets and attempt to stimulate the economy in a way that may accidentally lead to a depreciation in the euro. The net effect is the same, but it certainly has been slower than ideal.
And finally, what we have to expect from European markets during the next month, and which asset class will give the best satisfactions to the investors?
Well, European equities have underperformed quite substantially this year. At the start of the year, analysts' expectations were far too optimistic about the amount of earnings growth that companies were going to generate, and they had largely ignored the macro outlook, which actually was very negative. Going forward, I think some of these markets have now corrected, and we may see some upside to some of these markets. But at the end of the day, if we don't see economic growth coming through, then it's very difficult to see how earnings growth is really going to pick up from here.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.